Good day, and welcome to yet another one of our Ransom's weekly wraps. We are back after a brief break, and I hope you guys enjoyed the holidays we're having at the moment. As usual, we'll cover three topics that happened in the last week or so that affect you and your investments going forward. They are as follows. Firstly, we talk about US economic figures, then some tech results that came out this week, and finally, we are looking at AI again. I cover AI virtually every week now, and I think that's going to be likely going forward. The sector is basically moving so fast that if you skip a week or two, you could easily be left, behind. So let's start with US economic numbers. We had some GDP numbers coming out this week from the US, slightly lower than expected in terms of the GDP growth. Annualized rate of 1.1%. Expectations were closer to 2%. We also saw a slight tick up in the inflation numbers, so that kind of balances things off. The high inflation number, the higher price number for the GDP number, indicates that we are likely to be seeing the Fed probably possibly being holding on for longer. But the fact that we are seeing a slowdown happening faster than expected balances it off. Up till now, the Fed has been much more cautious in terms of inflation. They're caring about GDP. According to the chairman Jerome Powell, he says basically that he's more than happy to have GDP come down a bit because he knows how to fight GDP contraction. He does not know how to fight inflation as easily. So that is the U.S. economic numbers coming out. And like I said, it's kind of the worst of both worlds: slightly high inflation and slightly worse GDP. In terms of the tech news this week, two big numbers came out this week were Meta and Facebook. So let's look at these things. So Meta and Microsoft. So Meta is actually the new name of Facebook, of course. So Meta came out, not a huge increase in terms of numbers, but the stock really dried up. And what's been happening with Meta is that it's become clear that Mark Zuckerberg has given up on the whole VR dream of his, or at least reduced it to like a trickle, and now it is pivoting very hard towards AI. In fact, the whole of Silicon Valley is pivoting towards AI. I'll talk about that more in our AI segment. But so Meta basically, since if you follow these, webinars that we give out, these little, weekly wraps, a little while back I called for a buy on Meta, and it's up, well over 100% since that buy. And the reason for that call was not because I thought the company was going to do spectacularly well. It was because I was convinced that Mark Zuckerberg was going to be, convinced not to spend as much money as he's been spending on VR. And that was all that was required. The company as a whole was doing very well even before these numbers came out. It's a strong company. I think 3 out of 5 of the top social media, platforms out there. We're talking WhatsApp, Instagram, and Facebook. 3 out of the top 5 belong to Meta. That is a huge amount of power. And when I talk about AI, you'll see that this is a huge advantage that Meta actually has when it comes to the space. And then we had Microsoft come out with some numbers as well, also reasonably good. Market liked them very well. Big news out of Microsoft. Microsoft Windows 10 is apparently not going to be long for this world in terms of support, etc. It's probably going to be quite negative for most people out there because you got to change your Windows to the next version. It's going to cost you some money. It's probably going to make your life a little more difficult because you're going to learn things again. But this kind of cycles come and go with Microsoft, and it's no use selling a software program to somebody here and then have to change it, and you can't sell it more. You want to basically always be updating and charge them more for more new things. And Microsoft's subscription model at the moment, that makes me think that this is just going to continue. They'll be updating, they'll be pushing things forward. It's like when your iPad or your iPhone updates nowadays, it's just going to be something you're just going to live with, because if you don't, there's no support, and with no support in this current environment, you just can't function. So yeah, that's Microsoft coming out, and we know Microsoft's a huge player in the AI space with ChatGPT and OpenAI, its acquisition of part of that company, and that makes us believe that we're going to see a lot more integration coming through with regards to Microsoft and AI going forward. And because of the fluctuations of the market, that's really going to impact the makeup of the market, quite frankly. People who have established patterns in terms of for search engines, in terms of browsers, that's all going to change in the next couple of years because of the fact that what used to be much of the same, one browser versus another, it's not going to be the same anymore. There's going to be differentiation when it comes to browsers. And I'll talk about that right now in our AI segment. Okay, so what's been happening with AI since I last spoke to you guys? Firstly, Lots of new developments. We have had the video stuff from NVIDIA. We've had more developments with regards to these auto GPTs that have been coming out. Some interesting numbers out of or some interesting news out of OpenAI. For instance, there's a version of ChatGPT that they're going to be basically giving to you or selling to you at a higher cost. And one of the things there that's interesting is that if you get this different version of ChatGPT with no memory, basically, so it doesn't remember your conversations with it. One thing, it reduces the functionality because if you basically don't have the conversations, this thing doesn't remember what you talked about it before, and therefore you gotta, it may not. When you talk to it and you give it basically, communicate with it, and you give it more information, it's better able to service your needs. So why would you want not to save that information? Well, according to Microsoft, this thing is going to give you also a guarantee that they're not going to use that data for training on the program, which kind of, if you work backwards, means that everything else you do is being used for training on that program. That means if you are using your work information and putting it into ChatGPT, your emails, your reports, etc., that you're using in ChatGPT, and quite frankly, a lot of guys are doing that right now. I think they have 100 million daily users that are using ChatGPT, and a lot of them are using it for business. Even if you're paying the $20 per month subscription, this new version that you pay extra for is different from the $20 per month version you pay for. All that data is being used by ChatGPT or by OpenAI to train its programs. There were cases where Samsung, which is a direct competitor in many areas to Microsoft, their staff were using ChatGPT to do work for them. That means all of Samsung's proprietary data was being freely given to Microsoft. Okay, and that applies to every single business that uses it at the moment. And Microsoft having this advantage with ChatGPT and with the OpenAI right now. Look at it, 100 million daily users. It's very, very important to understand what this means. The way I'd phrase it is this: imagine you had a child and you put the child in front of a TV and have the child basically learn from a TV. Then have a child basically learn from an adult that interacts with it. Which child is going to be smarter? The child that watches a ton of TV, and the child that plays with adults and communicates with adults and that kind of stuff. Obviously, the child that plays with adults is going to be smarter. And that is kind of what's happening here with ChatGPT. It was trained with data from the internet, basically just like TV. It wasn't interacting with this data, it was just basically learning from it. Just lots of data, figure your patterns out from the data. Wikipedia, all that stuff, that was the stuff it was learning from. Looking at, social media stuff. Twitter says it was looking at Twitter, data, Reddit and all those things, yeah. But these guys weren't interacting with the program. They were just putting stuff out for other people. So it's like a child basically watching things go by. No one's talking to it, but it's just watching the world go by. Maybe watching some TV, watching adults interact, but not actually interacting with the adults themselves. But with OpenAI ChatGPT, as we are using it right now, we are interacting with it. We are telling it when it's good or bad. We are giving it feedback as to what's happening with its results. That is like a child playing with an adult. That is a totally different kind of data that it's getting. That's a better kind of data, I think. That's also going to be a proprietary kind of data that nobody else has access to. Nobody else in the entire world is going to have access to Microsoft's the data that Microsoft has access to by people interacting with ChatGPT. Wikipedia is for the world. Even Twitter, you can pretty much look at Twitter if you wanted to. Reddit is not saving us all this data. Of course, if you want to go use it officially, you've got to pay money, etc. But it's still available in the public. But not this stuff. This stuff is entirely within Microsoft's ecosystem, entirely controlled by OpenAI. And I do think that gives them a huge advantage. And as it becomes more viable, and I'll talk about this in a second, more and more things on Microsoft go towards the AI. All the stuff that you're using Microsoft for becomes feeding data for OpenAI's training programs. That means that this program won't just basically have special information, it'll have information that's directly interacting with it, giving it feedback with all its stuff. The improvement that could be coming from this. Okay, again, I'm not technical on this subject, but it does seem to me to be better than you'd be expecting by just increasing the number of amount of data you get by a similar amount, or increasing the amount of transformers, which are the size of the net, like the neural network you're learning from. The fact that you're getting actual feedback on these things, it's going to make a huge difference and make Microsoft's lead in the sector stick around for longer. And now I talked to you about browsers and so on. Microsoft's integrating OpenAI into its mail, into its browsers. What that means is that it used to be you get Gmail, slightly better user interface, you use Google, use the Chrome, or you use Firefox, blah blah. It doesn't really matter to you because they do much the same thing. You go to some websites don't quite work as well on one as the other, but generally they work pretty much the same. But if you put in an AI servant with your browser, okay, of course, you've got to admit that the stuff I told you about it collecting data is a bit scary for some people. But, leaving that aside, it makes it a lot more viable for business. Let me tell you what it can do for you, right? Let's just say you are looking at an email from, like, say, 5-6 years ago of some person that's like a customer complaining to you about something they should have done, or you're trying to trace something back. How often have you had to do that? I mean, a month doesn't go by when I don't have to look at an email chain from, say, 3 years ago or 2 years ago. Every single month. Sometimes more than once a month, like every single week sometimes. And those are a bother, let me tell you that. Got to trace the emails up, making sure every email from that person you're looking at the right time, the right date, blah, blah, blah. Very difficult to work with, very complicated. Imagine you had an AI system working off that data. You just ask it, hey, this guy here, just give me an idea what he's talking about. When did I last speak to him? When this conversation start? When that conversation end? When do I refer to about this and that with him here? The stuff that you use GPT for, but on your email. Huge improvement in productivity, I would think. And then you also have it working off your browser. It knows what you like, it knows what you want. You can say, hey, what concerts are around my house at this point in time? It's not saying concerts in my area, it just gives you an idea. It works on what you're looking for. Okay. And that integration of AI into the browser, let me tell you something, it makes a huge difference. And for the first time in I don't know how long, I'm using the Microsoft browser at the moment. I usually have Firefox on one thing, I have Chrome on the other, I have all these different things. But right now, I'm using the Microsoft browser for the first time in many years. And it's because of its integration with AI. And this is going to be something that's going to be more important because not only does they get my browser like services or browser usage, they get the data I'm using as well. Because they see what I want, and then when I ask the AI to do something for me, they understand, or the AI basically learns, more and more about what a human wants and what a human expects from it. Very big deal. Okay, so AI is really taking up in that area. Of course, I mentioned Meta. Meta has got its own AI thing, and again, the data sources that Meta has. I took the 3 biggest social media things. Huge advantage. I think they're going to start kind of doing something around training around that and giving you your own personalized avatar. They kind of try to bring the stuff that they created with the VR over to AI, so you have like a more personalized kind of like a virtual reality person that's talking to you. And Google also, has a huge advantage in this area that other places don't have. If it's not going to be training Gmail, or using Gmail to train the program, I'd be surprised. Already Gmail is being used for advertising. Think of all the Gmails, all the mails you've sent using Gmail for the last I don't know how many years. All that can be used for training. And that training will make that program have a special source of data that's going to make it different. And that's when it comes to AI. There's 2 things make AI special or work. One is, of course, is the computers, the transformers, blah, 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 and the algorithms. The second thing is actually the data you feed into it. You have no data. It's like having a genius child with no education and having no stimulus. It's not going to function. You know what I mean? You have to have the child with the brain and the child with the stimulus that gives you the functional human being. The child has a damaged brain or some issue with that, doesn't work as well. The child can be perfectly healthy, but you deny it access to stimulus and to information, the child does not work because it goes to its potential. And the big platforms out there, the Googles, the Microsofts, the Apples, the Metas, and by the way, also the Amazons. I'll talk about Amazon in a second here. These are all looking for a source of data to feed into these systems to try and get them something. And speaking of Amazon, for those that don't know, spends more than any other tech company, and by quite a bit on R&D. Amazon basically spends more than the next 2 guys combined, okay, on R&D. Amazon basically spends multiples, many multiples, more than Tesla does entirely on R&D. So Amazon's a huge R&D spender. And Amazon has already come out with integration of AI into its AWS, Amazon Web Services. That is a huge amount of money. And also, if you want to think about it, data as well. It has shopping data, it has communication, it has the good reasons, it has all these different kinds of sources of data. And quite frankly, these sorts of data are more valuable than you think they were. So, if, for instance, you look at Elon Musk's purchase of Twitter, That Twitter database is more valuable than it was valued at when he bought the company. Of course, the overall company is down because of revenue and blah, blah, blah. But when he bought that company, that database was like, not such a huge deal. Now it is a very big deal. And the way I'd phrase is this: imagine you had a piece of land and there was this ugly black flu that kind of came out. It was poisonous, killed your animals, killed your plants. It wasn't really useful. Later on, it turns out it's oil, and now someone's learned how to make that oil into petrol, and now suddenly you're a billionaire living in, wherever. That is the kind of situation that's happening here. Things like Reddit, things like Quora, things like Twitter are suddenly becoming very valuable, not because of the advertising and the stuff that they were usually relying on, but because of the fact that they have these huge sources of data that can be used to basically train these programs. Okay, and one final thing, we're already starting to see job losses coming through. We saw, for instance, huge changes happening in the computer art sector and the low level. So, all those computer games you play in, those kind of things, there's coming out there in a place like China and Asia and so on, out there drawing these little images for the thing. Now, those guys, that 70+% of them have lost their jobs in the last year. You're going to find the similar thing happening to programmers, because now programmers become a lot more productive. Unless you decrease the amount of demand for programmers, the fact that supply is increased is going to cause the number of programmers to go down. Okay, and the same thing is going to be happening in things like accounting. Accenture, for instance, has come out, and I think they've got a deal with Accenture, PwC. Sorry, they've come out and they've made a deal with Microsoft. I think it's like $1 billion deal, $1 billion deal. That's going to help them work with AI, etc. And that's going to be a huge thing for towards these companies going forward. If you're a company in consulting, you're a company in accounting, in certain kinds of law, you are going to be really disrupted in the next year or so. Within the next year or so, not wait a year or two to happen. Within the next year or so, it's going to happen. So yeah, taking that into account and understand that this AI stuff is really progressing. And we're already starting to see moves happening. And speaking of which, I've announced before, but we're going to be launching an AI fund in the next month. We'll do a presentation that we launched at the second half of this month. That is something I think that we need to, obviously, as South Africans, look at. It's going to be very difficult for us in a country like this here, to adjust to the AI stuff that's happening out there. Places like the US and Europe and so on, what's happening there is that they're going to be able to go off and, if it becomes a really big disruptor, it becomes a really, huge impact on their economies. They are going to be the sources of the money as well. They are going to be having hosting the companies that are making all this money. They can be taxing them and just transferring some wealth across to protect the people. Nobody's paying money from the US or Europe over to Africa and just us in Africa. When our businesses basically start having competition from AI, it's not going to be the same where we'll be able to basically look at the companies making it and say, hey, give us some of this money because it's taxed and blah blah blah. So yeah, it's an important thing. So like I said, launching an AI fund in the next month. We'll have the details out for you by the end of the month. We'll have a big presentation on it. We'll discuss the methodology, the reasoning, etc., etc. And I hope you guys join us. So thanks for joining me this week, and I'll speak to you again next week, and see how this exciting world develops. Cheers, guys.